Jordan is a former employee of Alto where I currently work. I know him as a JavaScript specialist. Cypress is a JavaScript-based test end-to-end testing framework. He's really great at what he's doing. And I know him as a React person, but apparently expanded far beyond that. So Jordan, you can go ahead with the self-introduction and Cypress.
All right, let me just share my
Yeah,
screen. Stop
let
sharing
me
my screen.
should take. Hold on. Stop share screen. You can go ahead, Jordan.
Okay. All right. So thank you, Oshane. Great presentation, actually. I didn't expect you to go that in depth with robot framework, but yeah, it was a good presentation. Hi, everyone. As Oshane said, my name is Jordan Jones, and this is going to be my not as in depth, but will be very concise presentation on Cypress. I just want to draw your attention to the title of this talk. It is The Road to Productivity. So, bit of housekeeping. As I said, my name is Jordan Jones. I am a senior software engineer at Orba, where we're currently working on Orba 1. Some of you might have seen me tweet about it. If you want more information on me or that, you can just check my website at heyjordan.com. That has pretty much every relevant thing about my software development career. So I love that Ocean touched on the different types of software testing and the importance of it. In this talk specifically, I'm going to focus on end-to-end testing and end-to-end testing with Cypress. So this image I got from testingjavascript.com. It's Kenzie Dodds. Any of you know Kenzie Dodds? He's a very good JavaScript developer, and he has a testing course. He calls it the testing trophy, and this I like it very much because it very accurately describes testing in terms of priority and in terms of kind of what comes after which. So at the very base of the trophy, you have your static tests. Now, static tests is just a fancy way for saying, okay, use a typed language. So your static tests would be something like using TypeScript, or in the case of JavaScript, using TypeScript, or using a typed language like Java, or using a typed language is a layer of testing because you can catch things like typos really easy and type errors super simple. Yeah, and then after that's why it's at the base, because the static tests are what you should start with. You want to use a typed language. I can't stress this enough. You want to use a typed language. You want to have that layer of assurance. Next, that comes after that is the unit tests, which specifically tests one. You can think of unit tests as testing your functions if your functions are really modular and they do one thing. So you can think of unit tests as testing a block of code. Above that now are integration tests, which are, to me, the most important layer on the testing trophy. Why? Because integration tests, you model your integration tests off how your user is going to use your interface in the case of UI development. So your integration tests comprise of several units of code working together, and the way how I write integration tests is that they reflect how the user will be using the interface. So for example, maybe a possible integration test would be, okay, let's just take a simple sign up. So user enters their email, enter their password, they click the login button or whatever it is, and then it takes them through a login or register flow. That entire flow would be an integration test. So think of integration tests as possible features of your application that you're writing. And at the very top is what we're going to be talking about today, which is end-to-end tests, specifically end-to-end tests with Cypress. What end-to-end means is that that basically means that once you've developed the application, you want to test it from the user end, go right, but you basically want to test the entire application. You make a robot do that. So they have here that sometimes called functional testing. So that's what the end-to-end part of it means. It means you test the entire application aspect from. So you're testing it like a user, they're going to click the button going to hit the back end, return some results. So that's where that comes from. So, which brings me to my next point. How many developers actually test? If you do a quick Google search, or if you're in the industry like me, you know that a lot of people find what's called TDD, or test-driven development, very distasteful. So they might shy away from it. They might say, oh, I'll write some tests, or no, I'll just get the application working first and then I'll write the tests. What I want to emphasize in this talk is sort of the reasons behind that. Okay. Just to bring it back to why do we write tests? Like, first we think about, okay, developers don't like to write tests, but why are tests important in the first place? Kinsey Dodds, again, he has such a great blog on testing. He says, the more your tests resemble the way your software is used, the more confidence they can give you. So we write tests to have confidence in our software. We write tests to have confidence in our code. So especially if you're an existing developer and you don't really write tests right now, or you're a beginner and you want to write tests, and you're probably saying to yourself, I don't need to write tests. I could just, I can click through by myself and there. That tests, it works. That's my testing. So I just bear this in mind. We write tests to give us confidence, so that when we are in a position to write mission critical code, like, a certain unnamed bank, and our manager probably asks us, hey, does this work? We can say, yes, I have 166 automated tests running on it with every commit. Or you can say, oh yeah, man, me check it this morning, me click through it and it worked. And you'd want to avoid situations like that. So that is just to drive this home again. We write tests to help ourselves. Don't try not to think of testing as a chore. I'm glad Oshane touched on the topic where he emphasized the importance of tests. I just want to pick up on that and say testing is meant to help you, not to give you more work. So why specifically Cypress? Why do we really need another tool? Now that we know how important testing is, why choose Cypress? I mean, Selenium and Robot Framework already exist, as you saw with Shane's presentation. So why the hell would I need to go and learn Cypress? So like I said before, a lot of people find testing to be a chore. And one reason why I think that a lot of people find it to be a chore is that they are using tools that do not empower their productivity. So what I mean by empowering your productivity in software development, and I guess in all disciplines in general, your tools are not supposed to hinder what you're doing. Your tools are supposed to empower. Cypress, I think, is one of those tools that make you want to write tests. It's really fun to write tests in Cypress. You're going to see in a little while. But so let's just talk about some limitations of Selenium. I don't think Oshin mentioned this in his talk, but Selenium is another. So I think before Robot and before Cypress, people usually use Selenium to test web interfaces. So some limitations of this is that it's more a generic solution and not really for modern day web development. So when I checked, you can write Selenium in Java and you can also write it in JavaScript, but there's a bit of boilerplate involved in that. It's not really a good experience when I did the checking. And Selenium uses a web driver. Not to get too technical, but this means that the execution time of your tests are going to be very slow. And you don't want slow tests because that is going to be a deterrent to your productivity and a deterrent to your developer experience. So again, you want your tools that you're using to empower you and give you a good developer experience. You want them to encourage you to write more and to write more tests. So some limitations of robot framework that I found, please, disclaimer, these are limitations in the context of testing modern day web applications. For shame. So I've seen
no comment.
So I've seen reports that sometimes robot framework can produce flaky tests. The flaky tests are what are known as inconsistencies with testing. So depending on the configuration of robot tests, the robot framework, some tests can fail, some tests can pass. That's what I've seen reports of. I haven't had extensive use of it, so I don't know how true those are, so take that with a grain of salt. Robot framework also uses a web driver. It uses I think
Chrome web driver.
Yeah, it uses the same thing that Selenium uses, something of the sort. So it also makes it very slow. As you see with Oshane's talk, he used Docker Compose, which he said was a cheat. So robot framework by itself, in my opinion, when I tested it out today, it doesn't really give me a good experience. It doesn't encourage me to write tests. The tests are written in Python. Now, this can be a pro or con depending on who you are. This is a con for me and for web developers, because if you're developing web UIs or web user interfaces, you are more than likely going to be in JavaScript. You're more than likely going to be writing some front-end framework. You're more than likely going to be writing some single-page application or a server-side render application, which is going to be in JavaScript. Having the cognitive load of switching between JavaScript and Python might not be for everyone. Again, a disclaimer: robot framework it describes itself as a generic testing framework, so it's meant to be that way. No fault to them, but it is a limitation if you are a web developer.
Can I interject? I feel guilty for asking to interject. There's some correction.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so sorry for interrupting your presentation. Firstly, so tests aren't written in Python. It can be, but tests are written in literally
In pseudocode.
pseudocode
Yes,
in
sorry.
English, as you saw. You can actually write JavaScript tests directly in robot if you want. It allows you to use whichever language, but the generic is where it's pseudocode, literally English. It's not necessarily slow because it's the web Chrome tool is optimized, and the flaky tests tend to be more misconfiguration. There are developers who just run something, think it work without doing any. It's like they set up a Apache server and just think it will do everything. Then that's a problem. So sorry to interject. I'll try to keep my mouth shut as much as possible. Continue.
Oh boy. Guys, as a background as to why we decided on doing this talk about 2 or so years ago, me and O'Shane were at it was a Make Better meetup, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and then a conversation came out about testing, and we got into sort of a heated debate about Cypress versus robot. So that is we both feel very passionate about this particular topic. So if you hear O'Shane interject again, that's why. So yeah, that brings me to my next point. What do we want from our testing tools? Notice how I'm not sticking to anything specific to Cypress yet. As O'Shane said before, your tools and the topic of tooling is subjective, meaning that what works for you might not necessarily work for me. And you want to choose tools. The point that I want to drive home is that you want to choose tools that empower you and don't hinder your productivity, because ultimately everyone's goal, I assume, when engineering is to be productive at it and to be able to produce good work. So we want from our testing tools as a web developer, as a front-end engineer, is that you want a test environment that facilitates fast testing iterations and a pleasant development experience that fosters productivity. So you want to be able to move fastly while having the tool get out of your way, in a sense. So I just want to drive this home that whatever tool you choose, it should not feel like a hassle when you're using it, which a certain framework does, but that's beside the point. Our tools should empower us, not hinder. So now let's get to the Cypress stuff. Some benefits of Cypress is that they call it time travel. So Cypress can take snapshots at each step of your tests. If there's an error with one of your tests, you can debug it right there in the actual test with dev tools. Real-time reloads. You can write tests, having them run in the background, and you'll see the results right away. Uses hot module HMR, hot module reloading for that. And automatic waiting. I don't know if anyone noticed, but in O'Shane's test, he had to manually write some sleep statements for the viewport to load, and so that he could take a screenshot. Cypress does that for you automatically. So it just waits. Depending on your command, I have a typo there. Depending on your commands or your assertions, it will figure out, okay, I need to wait here, or I need to figure out what I need to do there. So Cypress is very intelligent like that. And just a short comparison, some of the features between Cypress and Robot Framework. Like we said, It's in JavaScript. If you're developing user interfaces, you're more than likely going to be writing a JavaScript your front end in JavaScript, whether it be a SPA, or a server-side running application. This is a bit of an inaccuracy. This isn't my chart. I got this from a blog post. Like Oshane said, you can write your tests in pseudocode, and you can write them in JavaScript. That just doesn't feel empowering to me. So in terms of a browser, this Cypress supports Chrome, and since this chart has been made, it now supports Firefox and Edge. So formerly IE. Robot Framework also supports that. The runtime for Cypress is extremely fast, that you're going to see in a minute. Robot Framework, not so much. We dispute that flaky text. We already discussed automatic waiting. And this is a very crucial point. Cypress does not use a WebDriver. It uses Puppeteer, which is headless Chrome. So if you guys know Puppeteer underneath all of that. Robot Framework, however, needs a WebDriver, that Selenium WebDriver that we spoke about earlier. So it makes it quite cumbersome. You can do basically the same level of tests with both of them. Robot Framework is very vast and very powerful. So it can do it's fair to say that they both can do the same thing. Again, I just want to go back to saying you need to choose a tool that gives you a good developer experience and that empowers you to write tests. Element getting, since Cypress 4.1, I think these have been fixed, so you can get the XPath and you can get by CSS selectors now, and then that real-time reloading that we spoke about is also there. Okay, so let's get to some tests. So this application that I have running is what's known as a kitchen sink application. It basically shows off all the different features of Cypress. One part where I think Robot Framework gets the edge of Cypress is that the amount of code that you have to write. I think the pseudocode way saves you some lines, but it's not as explicit. I prefer to write tests this way, because you like I said in the beginning, you want to model your tests on how your user is going to use it. Sure, Robot Framework does that, but if you're going to be in a situation, more than likely going to be in a situation where you're also going to be the front-end developer, writing Cypress tests this way makes it a lot easier. And these are by no means how a typical Cypress test looks. These test suite test the entire API of Cypress. So that is why there's so many. This is the Cypress interface. You don't have to open this, but I just opened this for demonstration purposes. And you see it picks up all our tests that we have written here. So and you can select a browser, and it even runs in Electron, which I did not know. So let's see what it's like running the test. So on the left, you can actually step through and see Cypress running each of these tests. This is it. This is the application over here being tested. If I want, I can go to, I have this application running for 8. And Cypress is going through checking each of these assertions. It can, like I said, Robot and Cypress can basically do everything. But what I like with Cypress is that I can step through. Oh wait, my tests aren't finished yet. It's like 160, so even though it just ran 60 tests, 60 seconds, that's cool. Tests per second. Let's just wait on it to finish. And remember, it's Cypress. This test suite tests all of Cypress. And as you can see, you can test the window, you can test the viewport. You can, like I said, model your tests on how your users are going to use the entire application. This kitchen sink app over here is what they usually use. Okay, it has some failed tests. I think this is because I'm on Windows. Going extremely fast. Viewport tests. You can also do weights. All right, cool. And that is 116 tests in 135 seconds, which is incredibly fast for a test runner. And did I mention that you can also have live reload that comes out of the box without you needing to configure or set up anything? Let me go back to my presentation. So this presentation wasn't as in-depth or as extensive as Oshane's own, but the point that I want to drive home again, there is a real problem in our development community, specifically Jamaica, and it kind of extends internationally, where a lot of people shy away from writing tests. And you want, at least I think, is that you need to choose the right tools that make you want to write those tests, and you need to choose the right, I'd go so far as to say you need to choose the right programming language that make you want to write more. So that is my talk on Cypress. Questions, comments, queries, we can take them right now. Okay, more people. Andrew Smith, go ahead.
Yeah. So I guess comment more than question. One key feature that I think you didn't showcase though is being able to find the selector from within the Cypress UI. Right. So if you don't know the name of the element that you want to test for, the target icon at the top.
Yeah,
yeah, you can select which element, and it'll give you the exact path, and you can just copy your code.
Right. Cypress has so many features.
Any other question or comment? So I'm going to go ahead and make some comments. Hopefully it won't be any biased comments. So all right, so for clarity, if you can scroll down to the table, I just want to make some clarity. Can you scroll down to the table? This sounds like it's going to be biased, but it's not going to be, I promise.
Before you make any comments, this is the old chart, and so take that with a grain of salt.
Yeah, I know it's the old chart. That's why I'm basically stating what this chart represents and what it is right now. So when it's state language, it does not necessarily mean what the test is written in.
I clarified that point.
Okay.
Yeah, I clarified.
Okay. So the other thing, time for running, it varies, because one of the things that I use Cypress time to time. I actually use Puppeteer with Robot at times as well, but I actually found Chrome driver much faster at times.
Really? Really?
Yes,
That's
yes,
crazy.
at times.
Okay.
It's based on the configuration and the setup. And like for example, I think it was on a CentOS I tried run Puppeteer, but it kept on giving me some breakage, and then I just switched over to the Chrome driver and work. So
That might be a RAM issue.
yeah, so there was a comment. So it's at times, even though the software work, sometimes the configuration on the environment might reduce the impact, the efficiency of these tools that we use. So that's something that we need to take in consideration. Both Cypress and Robot is very easy to set up, install, and get started. One has more learning curve than the other. I will not call any name because I don't want to be biased.
Well, you don't have to call the name, because I can say that as well without not calling the name. It all depends. It all depends on who is right.
Yeah. So the thing is that Cypress is for web.
Right.
So Robot is more of a jack of all trades. It's for mobile, desktop, and web.
Kimberly
So
says she want to hear
what?
Let's check the chat.
In the next video, we'll have an open discussion about testing and some of its concerns and limitations. For example, whether should testing be a billable portion of a software project, and how should we get customers or clients pay for testing to ensure that their software work. Thank you for watching.